The sky above Earth turned dark on a Tuesday morning. It was not clouds that blocked the sun. It was ships. Thousands of them. They came out of nowhere, appearing in the empty space between Earth and the moon, like ghosts stepping out of shadows. Admiral Park. Tejo stood in the command center of the United Earth Defense Force. The massive screens on the walls showed the alien fleet. 3,000 warships hung in the darkness of space. Each one was bigger than anything humans had ever built. Their hulls were black and smooth, shaped like daggers pointed at the heart of humanity. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission," said a young officer. Her voice was shaking. Tejo nodded slowly. He was 62 years old, with gray hair and calm eyes. He had spent his whole life preparing for war. But not this kind of war. Not against aliens from beyond the stars. "Put it on the main screen," he said. The face that appeared was not human. It had gray skin stretched tight over a skull that was too long. Its eyes were yellow and cold like a snake. When it spoke, its voice was deep and full of pride. "I am High Overlord Vreth of the Karath Empire. Your species has been judged. You are weak. You are young. You have nothing that can stand against us. We have conquered 47 worlds. None have survived more than 3 days. You will surrender now, or you will be destroyed. This is not a threat. This is a fact." The transmission ended. The command center was silent. Everyone looked at Admiral Te-Ho. Far away, on a small stealth ship called the Silent Dawn. Captain Kim Yuna watched the same message. She was 34 years old, with short black hair and sharp eyes. She had never lost a battle. She did not plan to start now. "What do you think?" asked her second officer. Yuna smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "I think they made a mistake. They think we are afraid." She turned to her crew. "Prepare for silent running. We are going to take a closer look at our guests." Back on Earth, the politicians were screaming. The United Council had gathered in emergency session. Some wanted to surrender immediately. Others wanted to fight. Most just wanted someone to tell them what to do. Admiral Tejo listened to them argue for 10 minutes. Then he stood up. "Enough," he said. His voice was not loud, but everyone stopped talking. "I have studied their fleet formation for the past hour. They fly in perfect lines, perfect patterns. They do not change. They do not adapt. Do you know what that tells me?" No one answered. "It tells me they have never faced an enemy who fights back. They are used to easy victories. They expect us to run or give up." He looked around the room at the frightened faces. "We will do neither." A council member stood up. "Admiral, be reasonable. Look at their numbers. Look at their technology. We cannot win this fight." Tejo turned to face him. "Maybe not, but we can make them bleed. And that is something they have never experienced before." On the moon, in a research station buried deep underground, Dr. Han Sora was already working. She was a physicist, 38 years old, with tired eyes and brilliant mind. When the aliens arrived, she did not panic. She started studying. The data from Captain Yuna's ship arrived 3 hours after the alien message. The Silent Dawn had slipped past the alien sensors, like a shadow, and scanned their ships from close range. Sora looked at the readings and felt her heart beat faster. The alien shields were strong, very strong, but they had a weakness. She called Admiral Tejo immediately. "Their shields work in cycles," she explained. "When they absorb an impact, they need 3 seconds to reset. 3 seconds where they are weak." Tejo understood immediately. "If we time our weapons correctly, we can punch through," Sora finished. "I am already designing a firing pattern. We will need to modify our weapons, but it can be done." For the first time in hours, Tejo felt something like hope. Captain Yuna brought the Silent Dawn back to Earth space just before midnight. She had more than scan data. She had watched how the aliens moved, how they communicated, how they positioned their ships. "They are arrogant," she told Tejo in a private meeting. "They do not even watch for scouts. They think we are too primitive to be a threat." "Good," said Tejo. "Let them think that." He turned to a large map of the solar system displayed on the wall. His finger traced the path from Earth to the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. "For 20 years, we have been mining these asteroids. We have stations there, weapons platforms, railguns that can shoot metal at incredible speed." He smiled slightly. "The aliens do not know about them. They only scanned Earth and Mars. They think that is all we have." Yuna nodded. An ambush, the first of many. Lieutenant Beeksung joined them an hour later. He was the youngest officer in the room, only 28, but his mind worked faster than anyone Tejo had ever met. He specialized in tactics that no one expected. "I have been thinking about their formation," Sung said. "They keep their command ships in the center, surrounded by smaller vessels. Standard protection pattern. But if we can break through the outer ring fast enough, we can hit their leaders before they can react." Yuna finished. Sung nodded. "They have never had to protect their command ships." "Not really. They have never needed to." Tejo looked at his two officers. Young, fierce, ready to fight. He thought about all the soldiers and pilots and scientists across the solar system. Millions of people who refuse to give up. "Send a message to the alien fleet," he said finally. The communications officer looked surprised. "What message, sir?" Tejo turned to face the screen showing the massive alien armada. His voice was calm and steady. "Tell them, come and take it." The message went out across all channels. Every human in the solar system heard it. Every alien ship received it. High Overlord Vreth read the message and laughed. It was the first time he had laughed in years. These creatures were even more foolish than he thought. They would learn soon enough. He turned to his war marshal, a scarred veteran named Thol. "Prepare the first wave. 500 ships should be enough to crush their spirit." Thol nodded, but he did not share his master's confidence. He had seen something in the human admiral's eyes during the transmission. Something that troubled him. It was not fear. The war for Earth had begun, and humanity was ready. Fleet Commander Rin stood on the bridge of his flagship and looked at the stars ahead. 500 warships followed behind him, each one carrying enough firepower to destroy a city. He had conquered 11 worlds himself. This would be number 12. The humans had sent their foolish message. "Come and take it." Rin had smiled when he heard it. He had heard brave words before. They always came from species too stupid to understand their own weakness. In a few hours, those words would be forgotten. "Set course for the third planet," he ordered. Standard invasion formation. His ships moved as one, like a flock of deadly birds flying toward their prey. Far ahead, hidden in the endless field of rocks called the asteroid belt, Lieutenant Beeksung waited. He sat in a small command center built inside the asteroid series. Around him, screens showed the positions of hundreds of weapons platforms hidden among the floating rocks. "They are coming," said the officer next to him. 500 ships, moving in standard line formation. Sung nodded. "Standard, predictable, perfect. Tell all stations to hold fire until my command. And make sure the timing systems are synchronized. Dr. Han's calculations must be exact." The weapons platforms were simple but deadly. Railguns that used magnetic force to shoot metal slugs at incredible speed. They had been built for mining, for breaking apart asteroids. Now, they would break apart something else. Admiral Pak Tejo watched from Earth's command center. His heart was steady, but his mind was racing through every possibility. This was the first real test. If Sung's ambush failed, the aliens would know humanity had teeth. They would be more careful. The advantage of surprise would be lost. Status of the stealth squadron? He asked. Captain Kim Yuna reports ready. Her ships are in position behind the alien fleet. Taeho nodded. Yuna's job was not to fight. Not yet. Her job was to close the door behind the enemy, to make sure none of them escaped. The Korath fleet entered the asteroid belt at exactly 0900 Earth time. Fleet Commander Ren looked at the floating rocks with boredom. His sensors showed nothing dangerous. Just dead stone tumbling through empty space. Primitive system, he said to his officers. No wonder they're so weak. They live in a field of garbage. His officers laughed. They did not notice the small heat signatures hidden among the asteroids. They were not looking for them. On Ceres, Lieutenant Seung watched the enemy ships move deeper into the belt. They flew in perfect formation, shields up, weapons powered but not aimed. They expected nothing. Seung waited until the center of the fleet passed the largest cluster of weapons platforms. Then he spoke one word: fire. Across the asteroid belt, 3,000 railguns opened fire at the same moment. The metal slugs flew through space at speeds no eye could follow. They hit the Korath shields in perfect sequence. 3 impacts every 3 seconds, exactly as Dr. Han Sora had calculated. The first shield fell in less than a second. Then the second. Then dozens more. Fleet Commander Rin felt his ship shake and heard alarms screaming across the bridge. Warning lights flashed red everywhere he looked. What is happening? He shouted. We are under attack. Multiple impacts on our shields. They are failing. Rin stared at his screens in disbelief. 70 ships were already gone. Just gone. Turned into expanding clouds of metal and fire. More were dying every second. Return fire. Destroy those platforms. But the platforms were hidden. They were small. They were scattered across thousands of kilometers. And they kept shooting. Captain Kim Yuna watched from the edge of the battle. Her stealth ships had moved silently through space, dropping mines in the hyperspace jump zones behind the Korath fleet. If the aliens tried to run, they would fly straight into a wall of explosives. Beautiful, whispered her second officer, watching the destruction. Yuna did not smile. She was counting enemy ships, counting the dead, doing the math of war. Prepare to move in, she said. Their formation is breaking. The Korath fleet was in chaos. Ships crashed into each other, trying to avoid the endless rain of metal. Commanders screamed orders that no one followed. The perfect formation had become a wild mess. Fleet Commander Rin made a decision. All ships, retreat. Jump to hyperspace. Get us out of here. His surviving ships turned and ran. 200 of them had already been destroyed. The rest fled as fast as their engines could carry them. They hit Yuna's mines at full speed. The explosions lit up space like new stars being born. 50 more ships died in seconds. The rest scattered in panic, jumping to hyperspace in random directions, no longer caring about formation or orders. Rin's flagship was one of the last to escape. Its shields were gone. Its hull was cracked. Half its crew was dead. But Rin was alive, shaking with fear and rage as his ship limped back toward the main Korath fleet. On Ceres, Lieutenant Seung allowed himself a small moment of relief. He looked at his screens, showing the remains of the battle. Wrecked alien ships tumbled among the asteroids. Fires burned in the darkness of space. 217 confirmed kills, reported his officer. We lost 4 weapons platforms. No human casualties. Seung nodded slowly. 4 platforms lost. 200 enemy ships destroyed. The math was very good. He opened a channel to Admiral Tejo. "Sir, the belt is clear." Tejo's voice came back calm and steady. "Well done, Lieutenant. But this was just the beginning. They will send more. We will be ready." High Overlord Vreth received the news in silence. He stood on the command bridge of his massive flagship and listened as Fleet Commander Rin told him about the disaster. 200 ships, Vreth said softly, lost to primitives hiding among rocks. Rin fell to his knees. "My lord, their weapons were unlike anything we have seen. They knew exactly how to break our shields. They were waiting for us." Vreth looked at him with cold yellow eyes. Then he pulled out a small device and pressed it against Rin's chest. The fleet commander died without a sound. "Failure is not accepted in my empire," Vreth said to the body on the floor. He turned to War Marshal Thol. "Take this garbage away and prepare the full fleet. We will not make the same mistake twice." Thol bowed and gave orders to his soldiers. But as he watched them drag Rin's body away, he thought about what the dead commander had said. They knew exactly how to break our shields. They were waiting for us. These humans were not primitives. They were something else. Something the Korath had never faced before. Thol kept these thoughts to himself. He had seen what happened to those who questioned the High Overlord. But deep inside, a small voice whispered a warning. This war might not be as easy as everyone believed. Back on Earth, Admiral Tejo allowed himself 1 hour of rest. He did not sleep. He sat in his quarters and looked at the stars through his window. The first battle was won, but it was only the first. He thought about Captain Yuna and her brave pilots, about Lieutenant Sung and his impossible ambush, about Dr. Han Sora and her brilliant discovery, about all the soldiers and workers and ordinary people who had chosen to fight instead of give up. He thought about the aliens, about their arrogance, about their anger, about what they would do next. The Korath had never lost before. Now they had. And wounded pride was the most dangerous thing in the universe. Te-Ho stood up and walked back to the command center. There was no time for rest. The next battle was coming, and humanity had to be ready. The war was just beginning. High Overlord Vreth stood before a massive window on his flagship, watching Mars grow larger as the fleet approached. The red planet looked peaceful from space, almost beautiful. Soon it would burn. 2,000 ships, he said to War Marshal Thol. More than enough to crush any resistance. Thol nodded, but his eyes were careful. "The humans surprised us in the asteroid belt, my lord. Perhaps we should send scouts ahead." Vreth turned slowly, his yellow eyes cold. "Are you afraid, Marshal?" "I am cautious, my lord. There's a difference." Vreth stared at him for a long moment, then looked back at Mars. "Caution is for the weak. We will attack with full force. When Mars falls, the humans will understand that their small victory meant nothing." The Korath fleet moved forward like a dark cloud spreading across the stars. On the surface of Mars, Sergeant Choi Day walked through the underground tunnels. Around him, thousands of soldiers were preparing for battle. They checked their weapons. They said goodbye to friends. Some wrote letters to families back on Earth. Day was 45 years old with a scarred face and strong hands. He'd been a soldier his whole adult life. He had fought in 3 wars on Earth before humans ever reached the stars. He knew what war really meant. "Sergeant." A young soldier ran up to him. "The evacuation is complete. All civilians are in the deep shelters on the far side of the planet." They nodded. "Good. And the automated defenses?" "Active and ready. The surface will be covered by 1,000 gun positions. Then we wait." Day put his hand on the young soldier's shoulder. "Remember your training. The aliens are big and scary, but they die like anything else. Hit them hard. Hit them fast. Never stop moving. In orbit above Mars, Captain Kim Yuna looked at her tactical display. Her stealth squadron was hidden among the small moons of Mars, their ships dark and silent. 17 vessels ready for Operation Falling Star, reported her second officer. Yuna felt a cold weight in her chest. Operation Falling Star was not a battle plan. It was a sacrifice. 17 converted mining ships, loaded with nuclear weapons, crewed by volunteers who knew they would not come back. The pilots? She asked. All confirmed. They know what they are doing. Yuna closed her eyes for a moment. These were her people. Some of them she had known for years. After today, she would never see them again. Tell them? She started, then stopped. What could she say? Thank you seemed too small. Goodbye seemed too final. Tell them Mars will remember, she said at last. The Korath fleet arrived at Mars 3 days after the disaster in the asteroid belt. High Overlord Vreth ordered immediate bombardment of the surface. His ships unleashed rivers of fire that turned the Martian landscape into glass, but the gun positions kept firing back. Hidden in craters and canyons, they shot at the alien ships with the same timed attacks that had worked so well in the asteroid belt. The Korath lost 50 ships in the first hour. Vreth slammed his fist against the arm of his command chair. How are they still fighting? We are destroying everything. War Marshal Thol studied the readings. They have buried their defenses, my lord. The bombardment is not reaching them. Then send ground troops. Dig them out? Landing ships descended toward Mars, carrying thousands of Korath soldiers. They were tall and strong, with thick gray skin that could stop small weapons. They had conquered dozens of worlds. They expected easy victory. They found Sergeant Choi Day waiting for them. The first alien soldiers to land stepped out of their ships into a storm of bullets. Human soldiers fired from hidden positions, then disappeared into tunnels before the aliens could shoot back. Explosions tore through Korath formations. Traps collapsed the ground beneath their feet. Day led his soldiers through the red dust like ghosts. They struck fast and vanished. They never fought fair. They never gave the enemy a chance to use their superior strength. Humans fight like insects, growled the Korath commander as he watched his soldiers die. They hide and bite and run away. But the bites were deadly, and there were so many of them in the deep tunnels. Dr. Han Sora coordinated the defense from a small command post. She had come to Mars 3 days ago to oversee the technical systems. Now she watched the battle through dozens of camera feeds. The aliens are pushing towards Sector 7, she reported to Admiral Taeho through a secure channel. But they are taking heavy losses, much heavier than they expected. Taeho's voice was steady despite the static. Can you hold them? Sora looked at the numbers on her screen. The math was not good. The Korath had too many soldiers, too many ships. Eventually, they would overwhelm the defenses. We can slow them down, she said. But not forever. You do not need to hold forever. Just long enough. In orbit, the battle was reaching its peak. Korath ships filled the sky above Mars, pouring fire onto the surface. But they had formed a tight formation around their carrier ships, leaving themselves open to a different kind of attack. Captain Yuna gave the signal. 17 mining ships lit their engines and flew straight at the heart of the Korath fleet. They moved fast, faster than combat ships, their hulls stripped down to nothing but engines and weapons. The aliens saw them coming. They fired everything they had. But the mining ships were small and fast and very hard to hit, and they only needed to get close. Yuna watched her tactical display as the first ship reached the Korath formation. Then the nuclear weapons detonated. The explosion was like a new sun being born. It swallowed 3 carrier ships and dozens of smaller vessels. Before the light faded, 2 more mining ships reached their targets. Then 3 more. Then 5. The Korath formation shattered. Ships tumbled away from the explosions, their shields overloaded, their crews dead or dying. 400 vessels destroyed in less than 10 minutes. High Overlord Vreth felt his flagship shake as a wave of energy washed over it. His screens showed chaos. His fleet was burning. What is happening? He screamed. Suicide attacks, my lord. An officer shouted back. The humans are flying directly into our ships. Vreth stared at the destruction. He could not understand. No species had ever sacrificed themselves like this. It was against all logic, all reason, but humans were not logical. They were something else entirely. The last mining ship, piloted by a young woman named Lieutenant Park Mina, flew straight at the largest remaining carrier. Her radio crackled with messages from her crew. "For Earth," said her gunner. "For Mars," said her navigator. Mina smiled as the carrier grew larger in her viewport. "For everyone," she said. The explosion lit up the darkness of space. On the surface, Sergeant Day heard the news through his radio. 400 enemy ships destroyed. The orbital bombardment had stopped. The aliens were retreating. His soldiers cheered. Some of them cried. They had fought for 3 days with almost no sleep. They had lost friends. They had seen horrors. But they were still alive. They looked up at the sky. Somewhere up there, 17 ships had given everything so Mars could survive. He would remember their names. He would make sure everyone remembered. "This is not over," he told his soldiers. "The aliens will come back. But today, we won. Today, we showed them what humans can do." High Overlord Vreth pulled his remaining fleet back from Mars. He had lost over 600 ships. He had lost thousands of soldiers. He had lost something even more important. He had lost his certainty. War. Marshal Thole said nothing as they retreated toward the main fleet. But he was thinking about the humans who flew their ships into death. Thinking about the soldiers who fought in the tunnels. Thinking about an enemy who would not break, no matter what you did to them. For the first time in his long career, Thole felt something he had never felt before. Respect. Admiral Park Taiho received the final reports at midnight. Mars was safe. The civilian population was alive. The ground forces had held, but the cost had been high. 17 ships and their crews. Hundreds of soldiers. Good people who deserved to live. He looked at the list of names on his screen. He would read everyone. He would remember every face. That was his duty as their commander. Then he would prepare for the next battle. Because the Korath were not finished. They were wounded and angry and more dangerous than ever. The war continued. And the hardest fight was still to come. High Overlord Vreth stood alone in his chambers. He had not slept in 4 days. He had not eaten in 2. All he could think about was the burning wreckage of his fleet. 1,500 ships remained. 1,500 out of 3,000. Half his armada lost to a species that should have surrendered in the first hour. He looked at his reflection in the dark window. His gray skin had turned pale. His yellow eyes were bloodshot. He looked old. He looked tired. He looked like someone who was losing. No. He pushed the thought away. The Korath Empire had never lost a war. He would not be the first High Overlord to fail. He would lead the final attack himself. He would watch Earth burn from the bridge of his own flagship. "Prepare all remaining ships," he ordered through his communicator. "We strike at dawn." War Marshal Thule received the order with a heavy heart. He had served the Empire for 60 years. He had won countless battles. But this time, he was not sure victory was possible. He walked to the observation deck and looked at Earth in the distance. The blue planet hung in the darkness like a jewel. So small, so fragile. Yet somehow, it had done more damage to the Korath than any enemy in history. What makes them fight so hard? Thol wondered. What do they have that we do not? He did not have an answer, and that scared him more than anything. On Earth's moon, Admiral Park Taiho inspected the final preparations. The lunar surface had been transformed into a fortress. Every crater held weapons. Every hill hid soldiers. The entire moon had become one giant trap. "Status report," he said to his officers. Lieutenant Beek Sung pulled up the tactical display. "All railgun batteries are online. Plasma accelerators charged and ready. Missile silos loaded and targeted. We have approximately 800 fixed positions." Captain Kim Yuna stepped forward. "The remaining fleet is positioned behind the moon. 300 combat ships. Not many, but enough to strike when the enemy is weakened." Taeho nodded slowly. 300 ships against 1,500. The numbers were not good. But numbers were not everything. "Dr. Han?" He asked. Han Sora looked tired but focused. She had not left her laboratory in weeks. "The EMP Cascade bomb is ready. We captured enough Korath technology from the asteroid belt battle to understand their power systems. This weapon will shut down everything within a massive radius." "How do we deliver it?" Sung asked. "We have one captured alien shuttle," Sora replied. "The bomb is small enough to fit inside. If we can fly it into the center of their formation—" "I will do it," said a voice from the doorway. Everyone turned. A young pilot stood there, a man named Yoon Jin. He was 26 years old, quiet and calm. He had survived the Mars battle. He had watched his friends die. "The shuttle is too small for a crew," Sora said gently. "It will be a one-way trip." Jin nodded. "I know. That is why I'm volunteering." Taeho looked at the young man for a long moment. He saw no fear in his eyes, only determination, only purpose. "Are you sure?" he asked. Jin smiled slightly. "Someone has to do it, sir. And I have good reasons to make the aliens pay." Taeho did not ask what those reasons were. Every human had lost something in this war. Every human had a reason to fight. "Then the mission is yours," he said. "May you fly true." The Korath fleet arrived at 0600 Earth Standard Time. 1,500 warships formed a massive wall of metal and fire. At the center, High Overlord Vreth's flagship led the advance. He would not hide behind his soldiers this time. He would be at the front, watching his enemies die. "All ships, prepare to fire," he commanded. "Target the moon first. Then we destroy Earth." The first wave of Korath weapons hit the lunar surface like a storm. Explosions tore across the gray landscape. Dust and rock flew into the black sky. But the moon fired back. 800 weapons positions opened up at once. Railguns and plasma cannons and missiles launched in perfect coordination. The air above the moon became a wall of death. Korath ships started falling immediately. Their shields broke under the timed attacks that Dr. Han had designed. Without shields, they were just metal boxes waiting to be destroyed. Vreth watched in fury as his ships died. "Push forward. Overwhelm them with numbers." The fleet advanced through the storm of fire. Ships fell by the dozens, but there were always more behind them. Slowly, painfully, the Korath pushed closer to the moon. On the surface, Lieutenant Sung coordinated the defense from a bunker 50 meters underground. His screens showed the battle in real time. Red dots representing enemy ships disappeared constantly, but the blue dots representing his weapons positions were disappearing too. "We are losing platforms faster than expected," reported an officer. "At this rate, we will be out of firepower in 6 hours." Sung nodded grimly. 6 hours. He had to make them count. Captain Yuna watched from her position behind the moon. Her fleet was ready to strike, but not yet. The timing had to be perfect. "Hold position," she ordered. "Wait for Dr. Han's signal." High above the battle, a small alien shuttle slipped away from the moon's surface. Yoonjin sat alone in the cockpit, his hands steady on the controls. The M-bomb sat behind him, its lights blinking slowly. The shuttle was captured Korath technology. Its identification codes were still valid. To the alien sensors, it looked like one of their own. Jin flew straight toward the heart of the enemy fleet. "This is Jin," he said into his radio. "I am in position. Beginning final approach." Dr. Han Sora's voice came back, soft and sad. "We see you, Jin. Good luck." Jin did not answer. He was already committed. The flagship was getting closer. The battle for the moon reached its peak. Both sides were throwing everything they had at each other. Ships exploded like fireworks. The lunar surface cracked and burned. Thousands died every minute. Vreth felt something he had not felt in a very long time: doubt. These humans were not breaking. They were not surrendering. They were fighting to the death, and they were taking his empire with them. "My lord," said an officer suddenly, "there is a shuttle approaching. Korath identification, but it is not responding to our signals." Vreth turned to look at his tactical display. A small dot was moving through his fleet, heading directly for his position. Understanding came too late. "Destroy that shuttle," he screamed. Ships turned to fire, but Jin was already inside their formation. He was too close. Too fast. Jin looked at the massive flagship filling his viewport. He thought about Earth. He thought about his family. He thought about everyone who was counting on him. For humanity, he whispered. He pressed the button. The EMP cascade bomb detonated in a flash of blue light. The pulse spread outward like a wave, washing over every ship in range. Korath technology was not designed for this kind of attack. Their power systems overloaded and failed. 600 ships went dark at once. They drifted helplessly, their weapons dead, their shields gone, their crews trapped inside metal coffins. On the moon, Lieutenant Soong saw the readings and shouted into his communicator. "Now, all positions, fire everything." The remaining lunar weapons unleashed their final barrage. Missiles and railgun slugs tore through the defenseless Korath ships. Without power, they could not dodge. They could not fight back. They could only die. Captain Yuna led her fleet around the moon and into the chaos. 300 human ships slammed into the confused enemy formation like a hammer. Her pilots were veterans now, hardened by weeks of desperate fighting. They knew exactly where to aim, exactly how to kill. High Overlord Vreth felt his flagship shake as explosions hit its hull. His power systems were failing. His shields were gone. For the first time in his life, he felt true fear. "Get me out of here," he screamed at his crew. "Emergency jump, now." The backup systems came online just in time. Vreth's flagship vanished into hyperspace, running from the battle like a wounded animal. But most of his fleet was not so lucky. When the fighting finally stopped, only 300 Korath ships remained. 300 out of 1,500. The rest were wreckage floating in space, or crashed on the lunar surface, or drifting powerless into the void. Admiral Taiho walked through the command center in silence. The screen showed victory. The numbers showed victory. But it did not feel like victory. Casualties. He asked quietly. Sung's voice was hollow. "Half our fleet is gone. 60% of the lunar positions are destroyed." "And Jin?" He did not need to finish. Everyone knew. Taiho closed his eyes for a moment. So many dead. So many sacrifices. But Earth was safe. The moon was free. The aliens had been broken. Captain Yuna appeared on the main screen. Her face was tired but proud. "Sir," she said, "the enemy is retreating." What are your orders? Tejo looked at the stars through the command center window. The Korath were running. Their empire was wounded. Their pride was shattered, but wounded animals were dangerous. If he let them escape, they would come back, stronger, angrier, more determined to destroy everything humanity had built. We follow them, he said. We do not stop until this is finished. The war had reached its turning point, and humanity was finally ready to strike back. 6 months had passed since the Battle of the Moon. 6 months of building, planning, and preparing. Earth had not wasted a single day. Admiral Park Tai-ho stood on the bridge of his new flagship, the Unity. Around him, 200 warships waited in formation. They were smaller than before, but faster and deadlier. Every lesson from the war had been built into their design. Hyperspace engines online, reported Lieutenant Beek Sung. All ships reporting ready. Tejo nodded. They had reverse-engineered Korath technology in record time. Now humans could travel between stars just like their enemies. The playing field was finally equal. Set course for the Korath border, he ordered. It is time to finish this. The fleet vanished into hyperspace, leaving Earth behind. War Marshal Thol received the news in his command center. Human ships had been spotted at the edge of Korath space. 200 vessels, moving fast, heading straight for the heart of the Empire. He was not surprised. He had expected this since the disaster at Earth's moon. The humans were not the kind to wait for another attack. They would bring the fight to their enemies. High Overlord Vreth was no longer in command. The Empire had removed him after his failure, sent him away to some forgotten colony where he could die in shame. Thol was now the leader of what remained, 300 ships. That was all he had left. 300 ships to defend an empire that had once controlled 47 worlds. Should we prepare defenses, Marshal? Asked his second officer. Thol thought about the question. He thought about the battles he had witnessed. The humans in the asteroid belt. The soldiers on Mars. The pilots who flew their ships into death without hesitation. No, he said finally. Prepare to receive a transmission. I want to speak with their commander. Admiral Tejo was surprised when the Korath signal came through. He had expected to fight his way to their home world. He had not expected them to talk. War Marshal Thol appeared on the main screen. He looked different from the other Korath Tejo had seen. His eyes were not filled with arrogance or hatred. They were filled with something else, thought exhaustion, and perhaps respect. Admiral, Thol said slowly, I am War Marshal Thol, current leader of the Korath Empire. I wish to discuss terms. Tejo kept his face calm, but inside he felt surprise. Terms? Your fleet still outnumbers mine. Thol smiled slightly. It was not a happy smile. Numbers meant nothing at the asteroid belt. Numbers meant nothing at Mars. Numbers meant nothing at your moon. I have watched your species very carefully, Admiral. I have learned something important. And what is that? You do not know how to give up. You do not know how to stop fighting. Every time we pushed you, you pushed back harder. Every time we thought you were beaten, you found a new way to win. Thol paused. I could throw my remaining ships at you. We might even win. But even if we destroyed your fleet today, another would come tomorrow. And another after that. Until there was nothing left of either of us. Tejo said nothing. He waited. I am tired of war, Thol continued. My empire is tired. We have spent centuries conquering other species, taking their worlds, crushing their spirits. But your spirit cannot be crushed. And I find that I no longer want to try. Captain Kim Yuna stood beside Tejo, her eyes fixed on the alien marshal. You are surrendering? She asked. Her voice was hard. She had lost too many friends to feel sympathy for the enemy. Thol shook his head. I am offering peace. True peace. The Korath will withdraw from your space. We will sign treaties. We will pay for the damage we have caused. In return, you will not destroy what remains of our empire. Taeho considered the offer. He thought about all the people who had died. The pilots who flew suicide missions. The soldiers who fought in the tunnels of Mars. The brave men and women who gave everything to protect their home. They had fought for survival. But they had also fought for something more. They had fought so that one day, the fighting could stop. We will need to discuss terms in detail, he said. But I am willing to listen. Thul bowed his head slightly. It was a gesture of respect. That is all I ask. The treaty negotiations took 3 weeks. They were held on a neutral station in deep space, far from both Earth and Korath territory. Admiral Taeho led the human delegation. War Marshal Thul led the Korath. They argued about borders. They argued about reparations. They argued about prisoners and refugees and the dozens of small issues that come with ending a war. But in the end, they agreed that the Korath would withdraw from all contested space. They would release every species they had conquered in the past century. They would pay resources to help rebuild what they had destroyed. And they would recognize humanity as an equal power in the galaxy. In return, humanity would not pursue vengeance. They would not hunt down Korath survivors. They would not try to destroy what remained of the Empire. Dr. Han Sora was present at the signing ceremony. She stood beside Sergeant Choi Dae and Lieutenant Baek Sung and all the other survivors of the war. They watched as Taeho and Thul put their marks on the document that ended the conflict. Is it really over? Sung asked quietly. Captain Yuna stood nearby, her eyes still watchful. One war is over, but the galaxy is a big place. There will be other challenges. Sung nodded. Then we will face them, together. After the ceremony, Admiral Taeho addressed the galaxy for the first time. His message was broadcast on every frequency, reaching every world that had heard the original Korath invasion announcement. He stood in front of the camera, looking older than he had 6 months ago. The war had taken something from him, but it had given him something too. 6 months ago, an empire came to our world and told us to surrender. They said we were weak. They said we were young. They said we had nothing that could stand against them. Would they stand against them? He paused, letting the words sink in. They were wrong. We did not surrender. We did not break. We fought with everything we had, and we won. Not because we were stronger or smarter or more powerful. We won because we refused to give up. Because every human who picked up a weapon knew that some things are worth dying for. Freedom, home, family, the future. He looked directly into the camera, as if speaking to every being in the galaxy. Let this be remembered. Humanity does not kneel. We did not seek this war, but we finished it. And to any power out there thinking about testing us, I say this. Do not mistake our kindness for weakness. Do not mistake our desire for peace as fear of conflict. We would rather have friends than enemies. We would rather build than destroy. But if you threaten our home, our people, or our freedom, we will fight. And we will win. The message ended. Across the galaxy, billions of beings heard his words. On dozens of conquered worlds, slaves who had given up hope felt something stir inside them. Resistance fighters who had been hiding for years looked at each other with new courage. Leaders who had surrendered long ago began to wonder if maybe, just maybe, there was another way. Humanity had shown them something. They had shown them that the mighty could fall, that the weak could rise, that the impossible was just another word for not yet done in the years that followed. Rebellion spread across Korath-controlled space. Species that had been slaves for generations rose up and demanded freedom. Some of them asked humanity for help. Some of them fought alone. But all of them carried the same message. If humans can do it, so can we. War Marshal Thole watched it all happen from his new capital. He had expected it. In some ways, he had even welcomed it. The empire his ancestors had built was crumbling, but perhaps that was not such a bad thing. Empires built on conquest never lasted forever. He sometimes thought about Admiral Tejo and the humans who had refused to surrender. He wondered what made them different from all the other species the Korath had conquered. The answer, he decided, was simple. They believed in themselves. On Earth, life slowly returned to normal. Cities were rebuilt. Families reunited. Children played in parks and had no idea how close they had come to losing everything. Admiral Tejo retired 2 years after the war. He spent his remaining days in a small house by the sea, watching the waves and thinking about the past. Sometimes old friends visited. Captain Yuna came by often, telling him stories about the new ships and the new challenges and the new adventures waiting among the stars. "The galaxy is changing," she told him one evening. "Thanks to you." Tejo shook his head. "Not thanks to me. Thanks to everyone who fought, everyone who sacrificed, everyone who believed that we could win." He looked out at the ocean, the same blue water that had covered Earth for billions of years. So much had changed. So much had stayed the same. "We were lucky," he said quietly. "Lucky that the right people were in the right places at the right time. Lucky that we had scientists like Dr. Han and soldiers like Sergeant Choi and pilots like Captain Kim." He smiled slightly. "But mostly, we were lucky to be human. Because humans are stubborn. Humans are creative. Humans do not know when to quit. And sometimes, that is all you need." Yuna raised her glass. "To humanity." Tejo raised his. "To humanity. And to everyone who made sure it survived." They drank together as the sun set over the ocean, painting the sky in colors of gold and red. The war was over. The galaxy was free. And humanity had taken its place among the stars. Not as conquerors. Not as victims. As equals. And they would never kneel again.